Hi everyone, Tony Thompson here from the Child Protection Party. Glad you could be with me on this live feed. Don't do that many of them these days, but we're hoping to increase the number over the coming weeks, and particularly next year you should expect a regular live feed from us on the issues that concern us and hopefully you as well. We have another issue whereby a young baby has died, and the death actually occurred some time ago, but the coroner's report has just been released, or I apologise, the report has not been released, but the case is before the coroner, and the coroner has got some harsh words to say about the Department of Child Protection. In this particular case, an 11-month-old child died 3 days after the department had closed the case. The argument the department put forward was that they just didn't have the resources to manage this situation. My understanding is that the department had passed this over to another agency within this rural area, and they failed to check on this family. As a result of their failure, an 11-month-old child died. So I'll take you through some of the issues that had arisen as a result of this, and we'll leave it up to you to consider what was an appropriate action. The problem for me is that nowadays I'm working with a lot of families, and particularly families now that are in situations whereby there are allegations which normally, I think, in the past may have been dismissed as not that important and not worthy of having a child removed. I've had 2 in the last couple of weeks, which makes me wonder as to whether this is some sort of endemic approach towards dealing with child protection issues, given the number of deaths of kids that have been reported during this year, and this particular case in particular. So the question really is, are the department becoming more obsessive about removing kids where it would probably be unnecessary, for fear that situations such as this may occur? Well, there's a number of issues here. Number one, were they investigating this case significantly enough? And there's enough evidence to say that there would have been a case for a removal. And there are many other cases that I work with where there's not as significant, the issues are not as significant as they were in this particular case, but the kids have been removed, particularly when they come across a parent who they believe is intellectually challenged in some way. I'm working with a case at the moment where a woman had her 2 children removed from her, and she lives with her mum, always has lived with her. It's actually a grandmother, but has always lived with her, where there's adequate care around the place. I've visited the home. It's certainly not messy. There aren't feces on the wall or whatever it is that they're claiming in this other case I'm about to present to you. But the reality is that the department is now taking a knee-jerk reaction to removing children. And as I said in a previous video, be vigilant, because they're going to come after you at some level if they have any reason to think that a child is at risk within your home. So they're not going to be prepared to necessarily work with you in order to rectify whatever the issues are. They're going to simply make choices about removing your children. So I do urge you to be extremely wary of some of these circumstances. Now, which one is I'm looking at? This is the one. So, name of dead baby, relative suppressed on eve of inquest into Child Protection Department's failures over his death in squalor. Now, there's no disputing in this case, I think, that this child was at risk living the conditions, given the conditions that this child was living in. The Department for Child Protection did not make public the death of an 11-week baby in the care of an immature teen mother for 4 years, and has now, I think the mother's now 18 or 19, on the eve of an inquest into its failings, won a court battle to suppress critical details, including the infant's first name and image. Never publicly reported by police or the department at the time, the baby died on a fold-out couch while co-sleeping with his mother and 2 other siblings. The house in regional South Australia they lived in was crowded, covered in feces, and the home was used for drug use, and there was violence in that home. Now, my question is, I guess, given those current circumstances, why wasn't the child removed, or the other children that were in that house as well? Why were they not removed? You know, at CPP, we have a continual issue with families whereby it is unnecessary to get involved, as CPP does, as the DCP does, but it is important to be able to investigate, to be able to provide appropriate services for families so that they can rectify those issues. In this case, everybody seemed to know what was happening in this family, and regardless of the array of circumstances that would have normally have led to a child being removed, the department chose not to. And I think this is where the system is failing. And also, in this particular case, they said it was about resources. So they're unable to find people that could have been able to investigate or do an assessment appropriately. As a result of their failure, the department's failure, a child has lost its life. Now, I'm also concerned about the other kids in this house, and why is it that we've had to wait, basically, for a child to die in order for the department to take any action at all around the conditions within the home and the parenting of these kids. Now, I'm not here to make assumptions about the parenting style of this parent. I know nothing about them, but I do have enough information to know that in this circumstance, it would have been in the kids' best interest to have been removed. And why weren't they? I know that sometimes the department can't seem to win. They're either removing kids unnecessarily, or their kids are remaining with their parents when they should have been removed. It's a vexed question, and it's involved, right? It's something which can't be resolved easily. However, if the resources are there, that is the people, and if the people that are looking after these cases are appropriately trained and skilled, then perhaps there would be better outcomes for everybody. So what we really need to be asking right at this particular point in time is what the department is doing about improving their resources. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars recruiting new people. Why didn't they recruit them and place them into some of these other areas, these rural areas, and which could have, in effect, prevented the death of this child? Heaven only knows. What do you think about all of this? If you've got any comments to make, please make them here. I also put out a video earlier today in relation to what was happening in Victoria, and we're seeking some help in trying to better understand how you can improve a system. The Victorian government have taken it upon themselves now to suddenly find a way to improve this system, which has been abhorrent for years, and they're now making some decisions about how to improve that. So let's wait and see what they decide to do, because no one's ever been able to improve it adequately as long as the system's been in place. So further on in this particular article, the department had been notified 23 times that the child were at risk. 23 times. I've known the department to come in and do something about a case after 3 or 4 notifications. Obviously, it depends on the seriousness of those notifications, but I would suggest these notifications were serious enough. The department now, as an inquest that will analyse the institutional failings in the lead up to the child's death is set to begin on Tuesday, which is today. The department has acted to, by its argument, protect the family by seeking a suppress, which I don't disagree with. The other article, which sort of follows on from that, which came out today, talks a little bit more about actually what was happening in the house. He was sharing a bed with his teenage mother, 2 siblings, and another unrelated teenager when he died. On Tuesday, Detective Kim Mager told the inquest that the baby had a visible injury on his chin, stretching across the throat and down to his shoulder. The mother offered an explanation in relation to all of this, and that was disproven because apparently the injuries that occurred were not as she had defined them. So he says, I wasn't satisfied with her explanation. She described the injury as being in a different location. When I pointed out the injury across the throat and shoulder, she had no explanation. He alerted major crime detectives who attended the rural town. The court heard that detectives concluded the injury across the face, throats and shoulders were likely to the result of the child being squashed against the frame of the bed while co-sleeping with 2 adults. and 2 adults and sleeping. A video of the house filmed by Mr. Mager and played to the court showed extreme levels of squalors, including animal feces, rubbish strewn across the house, and flies and cats throughout. The detective can be heard coughing at the smell of animal feces and urine. So I guess there's no disputing the fact that the place was a mess and certainly no place for a kid or any children to be housed. There was quite a bad smell of animal feces through the house, he said. The inquest also heard the report to the department stated the child and the siblings were living in dangerous, squalid conditions, was closed because they lacked the capacity to investigate. This is what the inquest has been told. A postmortem found that the baby had a chest infection at the time of his death. Over the inquest on Tuesday, counsel assisted coroner Sally Giles and that expert reports did not determine whether the child's infection for sleeping position directly led to the child's death. So that issue is still open. However, Mr. Giles said that the expert paediatrician had concluded that the sleeping position was more likely to have contributed to the death than the chest infection. The mother was charged with 3 counts of failing to provide food and care for her children and was sentenced earlier this year. I don't know what that sentence was. Ms. Giles said in her opening that the inquest was not an exercise in prosecuting the mother, but would be looking at the family's interaction with the department and other services before and after the child died. So the primary issue here is the department's involvement, what they knew, what they chose not to do, and how in turn that has resulted in this child's death. So this is vitally important. We'd like to know if you can comment or contact us about any circumstance that you may experience whereby you believe that you've been wrongly or unjustifiably had your children removed, and there are plenty of them around. Please let us know. Contact us at the email address that I've just put down below, and inform us about solutions that you see for the problem. Our focus next year is to develop a solution-based process whereby we're able to look at ideas from you, the stakeholders, about what happens with kids that are in care, and particularly those kids that are taken and their families. And how is it that you would like to have seen things different, or what improvements you would like to have had made that would have made things easier for you to either have your kids returned to you or not to have them taken in the first place. We need to highlight the reasons why this happens. That it was interesting that in the Victorian situation that they're blaming this system for failing. Again, here we have a system that fails dramatically, in fact, because a child dies, and we've had a number of those cases this year. What do we do about this system to, number one, make sure that children are safe, which is what CPP is all about, and number two, to look for errors within the system. Now, the system is about people. People influence. They are this system. So it is not necessarily always about laying blame, but it's about saying, what was your experience when you were dealing with the department? How did that impact you? And what would you like to have seen done that would have been different, that would have been more helpful to you and having your children returned to you or not removed in the first place? Well, how do you view that? Now I'll just go to Jade Milner says they don't have the resources because they are wasting them, taking children away from people who are actually taking care of their kids. Well, I don't disagree with that. In fact, this is the essence of the problem. The problem is that they are unable to assess families that can still look after their kids, and they have this knee-jerk reaction to removing all children because at the end of the day, they are themselves not convinced that the children will be safe, and so they believe, erroneously, but they believe nevertheless, that a child is better placed in their care than with a parent, or at least working with the family so that child or children can be safe. They'd prefer to think that they are able to save these children from these terrible parents as opposed to working with them themselves. And it's a disgrace because it's not the case. Child protection should be there to protect all children. Child protection, as we experience it in this country and around the world, is about trying to mitigate against potential harm to children by simply removing all of them, or as many as they can, so that they will not experience situations like this one that I've just outlined. The result of that is a knee-jerk reaction when it comes to a notification, and in this case they had 23 of them and chose to do nothing. In many other cases they have less notifications than that, with fewer reasons to remove a child, but do it for fear that eventually they may find themselves in this situation. So they're so risk averse that they're going to do what they can to remove as many children as they can. And whichever way you look at it, that is simply wrong. So if you've got any further comments that you'd like to make, please let us know. Contact us on that email address, which I will put up again, and let us know what your experiences are. Also, can I just say that we need to, this coming year, 2023, is going to be the year where we're really going to focus on a solution-based process, and that we need your help to work out what that is. As a result of that, we'd like you to join the Child Protection Party so that you can become a voice for your issues, and you can help us to develop whatever program we think is appropriate so that children can be safe. Also, we'd like to be able to think that perhaps you, if you're watching this on YouTube, could you please subscribe and ring the bell? And my subscription isn't coming up, so I don't know what's happening around that. Yes, it is. I'll put that up in a second if I can find it. No, I can't, so I won't. So thanks for being with me, everybody. Look, if you've got an issue, we here at the Child Protection Party are the people that will help you at least work your way through that as best as we can. But the best thing that you can do is join us and become a part of the solution rather than being the problem. Thanks, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.